So tonight I'm going to start with some very clear instructions, or maybe they're directions or priorities, that a pastor gives to a community of believers. The pastor is Paul, and the community of believers, let's try it that way, are in Corinth. And he said, pursue love and eagerly desire gifts of the Spirit, but especially that you may prophesy. Now that version is the Tree of Life version, because I went through all the versions till I found one that I thought captured the two Greek words that are in there. So the first one is pursue love. If you read the NIV, it says follow the way of love. Follow doesn't sound the same as pursue, does it? So this is saying pursue love. Make sure it's all about love. And it makes sense in 1 Corinthians 14 where he says that because he just spent a whole chapter talking about how important love is. If love's not without love, you're noisy gong, you achieve nothing. If love's not your motive, he basically says forget it. You're not going to achieve anything. So make sure you pursue love. Chase after. Dioko is the Greek word. So pursue love. Make sure it's about love. And then eagerly desire gifts of the Spirit. Now the Greek word is zeleo. To be zealous in the pursuit of. To desire earnestly. This isn't a suggestion. This is a matter of, this is of great importance. So to eagerly desire gifts of the Spirit. Prophecy, we're going to talk about the gifts of the Spirit. So eagerly desire them. And he already listed the gifts of the Spirit, that he was telling them, instructing them and us to eagerly desire. He made a list of them in 1 Corinthians 12. You may want to go there. From verse 7 to 11 it says, now to each one the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. To one there is given through the Spirit a message of wisdom. To another a message of knowledge by means of the same Spirit. To another faith by the same Spirit. To another gifts of healing by that one Spirit. To another miraculous powers. To another prophecy. To another distinguishing between spirits. To another speaking in different kinds of tongues. And to still another the interpretation of tongues. All these are the work of the one and the same Spirit, and he distributes them to each one just as he determines. And I might say, he distributes just as he determines, as the body eagerly desires them. Now, I'm going to, and someone explained this to me, which I thought was helpful. I find helpful to put them in three different types of gifts. There are firstly the revelation gifts. So they are how God reveals something, and we're going to look more at that in a moment. Then there are the vocal gifts, gifts that are used coming out of our mouth. Prophecy, speaking the truth of God. Tongues and interpretation, all vocal gifts. And then faith, healing and miracles are often described as the power gifts. They're the action gifts. And all these instructions and directional priorities are given that says eagerly desire them. It's in the context of when fellow believers get together as community. So, when was the last time you got together as community? And did you pursue love and eagerly desire those 9 gifts? No. Well, if I look at the first 40 plus years of my life, I would say, no, I didn't. There are times where I'd say, yeah, I pursued love. It was all about love. And I'd see others in community pursuing love. But I didn't see anyone eagerly desiring spiritual gifts. Well, I never did. And as a pastor, I didn't tell people to eagerly desire spiritual gifts. Why not? Because it says eagerly desire them. That's an instruction, isn't it? Well, in my defence, I'd say I didn't eagerly desire them because I was ignorant of them. I didn't even know what the gifts were, let alone how to eagerly desire them. So many times I desired healing, but I desired God to bring healing. And I'd say most times in this church on the Sunday, we ask God to bring healing. We don't eagerly desire the gift of healing that we can act with faith and put them together and see healing happen. And in the 80s, back in the 80s, I eagerly desired the gift of tongues. I remember doing that for a while, and if I'm honest, love wasn't my motive, and it certainly wasn't done in the context of Christian community. When you get together, eagerly desire tongues. That was more of a individual thing. So, why didn't I? Because I had a very good reason. I was ignorant, which in itself was a bit of a worry when you read what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 12, where he says, now concerning spiritual gifts, brothers and sisters, I do not want you to be ignorant. A lot of versions have, I don't want you to be uninformed. That's a nice way of saying ignorant. Innocent's another way of saying that. Oh, they're just innocent. No, they're ignorant. Okay, all right. So the good thing is that I didn't want to remain ignorant, and more importantly, God didn't want me to be ignorant of these gifts, these wonderful, amazing, powerful gifts that the Holy Spirit distributes to believers for the building up of the body. Now I can say that or more accurately, I and others, I can say there are times when I get together with the community that we eagerly desire at least some of those gifts. On Tuesday afternoon, in my office, a group of us eagerly desired some of those gifts. And last night, via Zoom, a group of us eagerly desired some of those gifts. What gifts? Well, I'll tell you the situation because it starts with community. Because on Tuesday afternoon, there was a group of us. In front of us was a person who was struggling, a fellow believer who was finding it hard or impossible to experience the freedom that they knew Jesus had for them, but they weren't experiencing it. That same person sensed that they were being tormented by spirits. They had the voices in their head, and they just didn't know what to do about it. Tried everything. Similar on Wednesday night. So, what did we want as people who were in this situation? Well, we wanted to know, as always, what is stopping that? Is there something stopping them from experiencing that freedom in Jesus? Is there something stopping? And is there spirits in the way that are thwarting it? Is there a root cause of the struggle? And we wanted to know what needs to be done to set them free. That's for the situation. And so, motivated by love, we eagerly desired words of wisdom, words of knowledge, and discerning of spirits. I have a confession to make. when I was started doing prayer ministry and for many years using a particular model, I didn't actually know I was asking for a word of wisdom. I didn't actually know I was asking for a word of knowledge. I didn't actually know I probably did know I was asking for distinguishing of spirits. But that's what happened, because we would say, Jesus, show us what you want us to know about this person and what you want to do for them. A word of knowledge is something that, not by human means, that is revealed to us. And so we do it as a group. An example of that, on Tuesday, someone in the group said, I see a picture of a little girl, probably 9 or 10 years old, and she is crying. Now that person didn't know anything about, she didn't know what happened when she was 10 or 11 years old, but Jesus did, and he revealed a word of knowledge which we tested, and we discovered there was something significant that happened at that time in her life. We didn't know that, but the Holy Spirit did. Jesus did, and he said, eagerly desire words of knowledge, and I'll tell you what you need to know. We also asked, show us what you need to know, and a couple of people in the group, I don't know, they felt a particular spirit or saw an unclean spirit. And I believe it was a spirit of fear. I don't know, it doesn't really matter. Was it a spirit of fear? Yeah, Lindy was there. So we asked for discerning of spirits. Reveal to us what evil spirits may be, if there's any there, what they are. And word of knowledge, and what rights did they have to actually, what permission they had to torment. And so words of wisdom, words of knowledge, words of wisdom. And what's words of wisdom? Words of knowledge is revealing what happens in the past or the present that we don't know by human means. Word of wisdom is direction about what to do in the future, for the future. So what do you want us to do? A word of wisdom can actually say, I think you need to do this. And often it says, I had a Bible verse needs to be spoken out. Time to speak that out. That's what needed to be done to bring about God's purposes. So up until that, I never knew what it looked like to get a word of wisdom or a word of knowledge. But now I can see that when Jesus reveals it, the Holy Spirit distributes it, and we eagerly desire that out of love. The Holy Spirit is keen to distribute them. So if we don't rely on revelation, and that's why I say that when we minister to people, there are lots of different models, but I say we rely on revelation. What do we rely on? First thing is, relies on revelation. We rely on Jesus only revealing what he knows is the most important to be done in the person. When people come for prayer, often they will, and this is understand, there's something that's really troubling them and it's burdening them, and they think, and if we ask them, where do you want Jesus to go? They say, we want to go there. And I'd say, and what I say to them, well, we could, but we're going to ask Jesus because he knows what you need and what needs to be done in your life first. And I'd say a lot of times it's not what the person expected. Usually it goes a long way back to childhood where something happened and a stronghold was established, and he says, I'm going back there first. The other thing is we rely on revelation, rely that Jesus will only reveal what he knows the person is ready to deal with. it's interesting when people come for prayer that sometimes it's not uncommon when them saying, you know, I hadn't come before because I was scared of what Jesus would reveal, all these deep, dark secrets, and it'd be a terrible time. I'd feel embarrassed. I'd feel hurt, and everyone would know all my terrible things that have happened that I've done. That's what they fear. And then every time, I don't know if I can say every time, well, I'll say every time, they say, not what I expected. There was so much, you know, Jesus was so gentle, and I feel like he was dealing with what I was ready to deal with. Now, as people come, I would say as a team, we say, there's some strongholds there. It's pretty obvious by the fruit of their life. But it's interesting how Jesus doesn't always go there because they're not ready to deal with them yet. And why would Jesus reveal something if the person isn't ready to deal with them? Well, that's why we rely on the word of knowledge and the word of wisdom. And the third one is, I believe that Jesus only reveals what he knows the team is able to deal with. Now that's a big one for me, those three things, because, and it makes sense that if Jesus is going to reveal a stronghold, some demonic influence, why would he reveal something if the people in the team didn't know what to do with it? And this is sort of, I've learnt by observation or experience to say, well, that makes sense. That Jesus will reveal what he knows the team is able to deal with. So that's a ministry, I call it, relying on revelation, those gifts. There is wisdom involved. So I don't know if you know the difference between wisdom and revelation. Not a word of wisdom. So we may be wise, and I'd say, well, I'm experienced, so when I know how to minister to people and what's a good thing for them to do. So, for example, if there is if we discerning of spirits and the word of knowledge comes and there's something to do with Freemasonry, and we ask the question, has there been Freemasonry in your life? That has come up by revelation. We don't need to say, Jesus, what do we want to do with that? Well, we ask him, but by wisdom we know that there is a process of breaking curses, prayers, that will get rid of, that breaks the power of Freemasonry, the stronghold. So there is wisdom involved, but we rely on revelation. Because if we don't rely on revelation, how do we determine it? Well, we go with the request of the person. And that's not a bad thing, but I'd rather, as I said to them, we could ask Jesus about that, but I've got a feeling that he will go what is most important and will go there. Or we rely on our own deduction to say, well, and there are good approaches, and I know there's different approaches where there's a bit of a formula that people go through, and you say, well, we need to confess all these things and break the curses and that. So it's like by wisdom knowing that there's lots of things that can cause strongholds, so let's just go through them one at a time and break them. Or ask questions, interview, and we got a sense of, well, it's probably that, let's go there. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying that's a bad model. I'm just saying of all the models, I'd rather rely on revelation because I rely on Jesus knows, and he sends the Holy Spirit as we eagerly desire gifts that we can, that he can reveal what needs to be done, what the person's ready to, and what he knows the team is able to deal with. Just going to go on a little rabbit trail at the last one because there's been quite a few sessions when something is revealed, and I remember as a facilitator, I think, I've got no idea what to do with this. But now I'm always thinking, I've got no idea what to do with this. Therefore, Jesus, you need to make it clear, because if you've revealed it, you want to deal with it, and we need to know how to deal with it. You need to teach us how to do that. So next week, I'm going to sort of bring this all together. Once we've come to the 5 weeks and talk about how all these things from the Bible, biblical foundation, how we put it into practice in a ministry situation. And I've been giving you taste of that tonight.